Throughout the course of Murder Drone's 8 episodes, we are introduced to numerous types of drones and the different programs that affect them. Most are relatively surface-level knowledge, but some are more niche and obscure than others. I've managed to pinpoint 11 different drone types and the 4 programs of note that affect them. I'll be covering them individually in an order that gives the most straightforward understanding of the show, even for those who didn't understand anything that was going on, which I garner to be most people. Also, I thought I should mention, some of the info discussed in this video is not disclosed in the show itself, but is instead gathered from Q&As with the show's creator, Liam Vickers. Alright, intro done. Let's get into the robots. Worker drones are general-use humanoid robots developed by J.C. Jensen in order to operate machinery and perform other kinds of heavy manual labor, most notably mining. It is to be noted, although they are built to primarily serve as the main workforce in hazardous conditions, particularly rich households can afford them to use as servants and perform various household tasks. Worker drones are powered by oil, and it flows throughout most of their body, similar to how blood does in humans. Their sentience is never really quite expanded upon in the show, but in the GlitchX 2023 interview, Liam expanded on it, and according to him, workers have a very simple base sentience that only exists to assist them at their jobs, and overall don't have any personality aside from basic reactions to outside factors. However, if a worker is damaged, treated like a human, or otherwise left alone for a long enough time to evolve on its own, they will gain sentience and personality like we see most of the drones in the show have. AI Core WD-1001 is the operating system behind each worker drone, and it's what runs their neural network, and is contained in the central computer of the drone known as the core. It is very briefly referenced in the show and holds little bearing to the story, but it's what makes these things go. All known lore about the roaches is not featured in the show, but rather comes from the 2023 GlitchX Q&A. Roaches were created by humanity in order to act as natural decomposers of inorganic material, most notably scrap metal and oil. However, they self-replicated at an uncontrollable rate and are now nothing more than traditional pests that feed on the bodies of dead drones. Adolescent worker drones, often jokingly referred to as pill babies, were created by the worker drones of Copper-9 following the death of all humans on the planet. They serve as a safe ground for newly created neural networks to learn and understand the world around them, prior to being given a traditional worker body that might have otherwise been dangerous for an underdeveloped neural network. If its mind is never transferred into a worker body, it will still continue to develop as normal, and this is predominantly seen with Bo in Murder Drones Episode 6. When WD-OS-606 is uploaded to a drone, it purges the AI core WD-1001, effectively killing the drone. It is standard to apply this to a drone prior to its disassembly in order to ensure it doesn't reboot itself after disposal. Even if WD-OS-606 is uploaded, if the drone's central core is not separated or destroyed, the core may reject WD-OS-606 and resurrect itself. However, this only has a roughly 0.01% chance of occurring. Zombie drone is a blanket term given to any drone that resurrects itself following their marked disassembly. Due to being unmaintained and otherwise damaged, zombie drones are sentient and do have personalities. In 70.3% of cases, no perceived change is seen in the drone, and this includes drones such as N, V, and J, as they are seen in Murder Drones Episode 5. In 29% of cases, the drone remains terminally locked out, effectively remaining dead. These drones hold no relevance or bearing to the story. And in 0.7% of cases, potentially hazardous mutations in the code occur. The only known drone that fits this criteria is Sin, who, upon resurrection, had a program known as the Absolute Solver affecting her. The Absolute Solver is a program that specializes in manipulating matter. It can telekinetically affect matter within a certain range of itself, and can also consume matter for later repurposing via black hole-esque constructs called nulls, or just by standard consumption. The Absolute Solver contains itself within a central host, where it predominantly resides. Secondary hosts are common, but not as powerful, and they can be remotely hijacked by the primary host. Any host affected by it will have much of their internal robotics replaced with traditional biological organs, bones, tissue, and blood, and all the other stuff. The Absolute Solver is extremely energy intensive, requiring much material and oil to properly satiate a host without risk of overheating and death. The only universally known weakness of the Absolute Solver is strong ultraviolet light, which burns and subdues any drone hosting it. Solver drone is a term traditionally used to describe any standard secondary host of the Absolute Solver. They possess most of, but not all of the Absolute Solver's abilities, and can be remotely hijacked by the primary host. Notable drones include Uzi, Nori, Dahl, and Yeva. Drones affected by the Absolute Solver have their cores mutated into a secondary emergency use body. This is where the drone's consciousness lies, and as far as we know, is immortal and virtually indestructible. However, these cores can be consumed by other Solver hosts, assimilating them and permanently subduing them. Patch 2.1.8 is a software patch developed by Cabin Fever Labs that, once applied to a secondary host of the Absolute Solver, prevents the primary host from hijacking control. The only known instance of patch 2.1.8 was contained on the Crucifix USB drive at Cabin Fever Labs, which was unfortunately destroyed. Disassembly drones were created by the primary solver host Sin in order to act as general exterminators of all drones and biological life on any planet that they were sent out to. They are technically hosts of the Absolute Solver, but their abilities are by far the most limited, only being able to manipulate matter inside of themselves. However, this does allow them to synthesize all manner of tools and weapons from within their hands. Sentinels were created to directly counter both solver drones and disassembly drones. They were the primary security force keeping control over Cabin Fever Labs and its test subjects, and successfully managed to defend it from all trespassing disassembly drones for years, eventually prompting Sin herself to try and get inside the lab. The Sentinel's greatest advantage is the flashing device attached to their head that can cause any drone that witnesses it to be temporarily locked into a boot loop, rendering the drone unconscious. This effect can be countered by relatively opaque eyewear protection, though. Keybugs are little AI assistants used by the test subjects at Cabin Fever Labs, and possibly also by personnel. They are also used as a sort of keycard, allowing access in and out of the labs. Only one is ever seen in the series. These have no official name, but Liam is often seen referring to them as worms. These are large biomechanical constructs that can only be created by the primary host of the Absolute Solver. These worms have the ability to create realistic holograms as well as mimic voices. Although they are an extension of the primary host, they do not possess the telekinetic abilities of the host and will not increase the range of their telekinesis. If a disassembly drone has its outer shell destroyed and is under the administration of the primary solver host, a worm construct will sprout out of the corpse with the objective of gathering matter in order to repair the destroyed disassembly drone. And with that, that's all notable drone types and programs covered. I suck at outros, so if you found this video even a tiny bit entertaining, consider hitting the buttons that make the algorithm happy, and so long as you keep watching my stuff, I'll keep making it. See ya.